G'day, I am Mordechai Becher,
And I'm Yoshua Karsh.
and welcome to Two Rabbis and a Podcast. And today we are talking about a subject that is, I'm sure, on the minds of many, many Jewish people and on the minds of many non-Jews as well, which is the subject of Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
We all know what it is. People call it anti-Zionism. It's Jew hatred. Accusations against the state of Israel, which are just insane and ludicrous. Um, Attacks on Jews, wherever they are, whether they're in Yale or in Brooklyn or in Australia.
Is Yale, do you think Litvish for Yoel? Do you think originally they meant Yoel University and then some Litvak got a hold of it?
I certainly hope not, although they do have Hebrew on their seal.
Yes.
Yes, they have Hebrew on their seal. Surprised they haven't got rid of that yet because it's obviously colonial.
It's only a matter of time.
So yeah, but attacks on Jews, and not, you know, forget Israel and the Israeli government and etc. But attacks on Jews and Israelis everywhere, um, horrific, absolutely horrific. But it's not new. It is not new. Jews have suffered from anti-Semitism for thousands of years. The classic is the blood libel. There are a number of different types of conspiracy theories about the Jews. I would say there's three primary. There's the blood libel, which basically assumes that Jews entertain homicidal intentions towards non-Jews, and that those homicidal intentions are encouraged by Judaism and Jewish law and ritual. That's number
The,
one.
by the way, the Canterbury Tales.
Mm.
Canterbury Tales, we had to, I remember, read one or two of the Canterbury Tales
Mm-hmm.
when we were studying literature. My
Mm-hmm.
mother actually taught British literature in high school for many years, and she spent quite a bit of time teaching the Canterbury Tales. And I remember one time I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna read the Canterbury Tales. Now they're written in Middle English.
Mm-hmm.
I think pre-Shakespeare. I think they're like in the maybe 13 or 1400s. So one of the tales is called the Prioress's Tale.
Yes.
And this story, I just was so shocked by this story. And not because such a thing could be written, but because we had been led to read the Canterbury Tales as an important work of literature. And this Prioress's Tale is essentially the story of a child that was killed by Jews and thrown in a pit, but the dead body of this child sang out like some song to Mary. And because that song kept on being sung by the dead body, eventually people came to find it, and they were obviously, um, obviously this is something Jews do, but they were just horrified to discover it in their own midst. They were, I think, able to wipe out the Jews in that area. I don't remember all the details after it, but it did involve much uh, murder and mayhem against Jews afterwards. But this was there was nothing about it. It was hardly even dressed up. It was
Oh, it's not
simply
dressed up at
a
all.
blood libel story
Just to read you,
written in the 1300s or
about Hugh of,
1400s.
it was about Hugh of Lincoln.
Okay.
Hugh of Lincoln. That serpent known as Satan, our first foe, who has his wasp's nest in the Jewish heart, swelled up and said, "O Hebrew people, woe! Is this a thing of honor for your part that such a boy should walk at will?" And start to sing as he's walking with such offense to spite you. The Jews proceeded to conspire out of this world, this innocent to chase. They found themselves a murderer for hire. It's horrific to read.
And there's not much more than a story about the Jewish community killing a young Christian child,
Yeah,
an innocent, beautiful young Christian child.
yeah,
This is one of the Canterbury Tales.
absolutely. And you know, I mean, the blood libel, according to most historians, the first example of it was actually in England. You know, it started there. It of course doesn't proceed past 1290 because Jews were expelled from England. But
But in literature, they kept it going.
oh, they did keep it going. You know, so you've got the earliest. We've got William of Norwich. Now, the second aspect of the Jewish anti-Jewish conspiracies. The first is this idea of that Jews have this hatred for humanity and want to kill non-Jews, and that's encouraged by Judaism. The second aspect of it is that the the Jewish people, it's a conspiracy libel. The Jewish people act as one in pursuit of whatever goals they have. In fact, it's insane. Now, it sounds insane. 1144,
Yeah.
the libel that the Jews killed, murdered William of Norwich in England, part of the libel was that the Jews around the world would decide on a Jewish community, one Jewish community in the world, to do a re-crucifixion by the closest thing to Jesus, the innocent Christian child, and they would choose someone to do this, choose a community. How exactly did the Jews of England communicate with the Jews of Yemen? Unclear. How did the Jews of England communicate, even from Norwich to London? I mean, it's insane. But
Yeah.
there's this idea, and by the way, you see both of these elements nowadays. People attack Jews, doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter what their opinions are, doesn't they're just Jewish.
Yeah.
You're Jewish, one of amorphous mass Jew, right? There's no such thing as an individual.
Yeah.
And the third is the economic conspiracy. That is to say that Jews are basically unproductive and acquisitive and rapacious, and just want to take everyone's money, you know. So, and you know, and
Apparently, you don't have to work hard to take everybody's money.
yeah, it's not work. It's actually not working for me, but okay, maybe, right? But yeah, and these blood libels, by the way, so many of them. There's so many of them. It's like ridiculous. But in many cases, there were, like, for example, the famous one was in Blois in France, 1171. There was not even a body or a missing person. And yet the Jewish community, approximately 35 people, were murdered, dragged to a wooden tower. They were given the option of baptism or death, and none chose the former. They were burned alive. So it was on the basis of a peasant seeing a Jew throwing something into the river. It was a Jewish leather merchant, and it was, I think, part of a animal, but there was no body, there was no missing Christian child, but out of the blue. So the irrationality of it is extraordinary, right? The idea that, I mean, matzah, or that, I mean, there are
What's
all
the
kinds
origin of that? Could you explain the matzah one?
well, there are a few different origins. One idea was that Jews, the earliest blood libel was that Jews needed to re-crucify Jesus. Right, so
Oh, Pesach would make sense. The
yeah,
connection to Pesach.
right. So they'd find an innocent Christian child. This is the claim.
Yeah.
Then they came up with all types of bizarre theories in medieval Europe, and thousands believed this. For example, there was such a thing as the Jewish stench. that because Jews were not
Mm.
cleansed of the sin, original sin, they had a horrible stench. And the only way to cure this, they said, was with Christian blood. So,
Interesting.
yes, right. Um, and now, since matzah was something that all Jews ate, or what, right, guaranteed to have eaten once a year at least, this was the way that they would. The theory was that they would eat this. The other theory was that Jewish men. This was to cure Jewish male menstruation.
Men menstruated?
Yes, Jewish men,
Only Jewish men.
yeah, because of the original sin and
Mm.
etc. And hence they needed Christian blood to cure this. There was
Was this
another.
connected at all to the possibility of giving birth, or it was just
No,
menstruation?
no, that's much more recent, right? Then you've got this idea of what they call the torturing of the host libel. You know that first appeared in um, just by the way, yeah, that first appeared in where was that? Passau in Bavaria, like 1478.
So the host is
The host is now torturing the host does not mean staying too long at the Shabbat table.
right. You've had that, I'm sure.
That's yeah, there are
Yeah.
Jews who are guilty of that. Yeah, right.
Yes.
But torturing the host means that Catholics have a wafer in church during the ceremony, the Eucharist, and according to the doctrine of transubstantiation, which has its origins in the Christian scripture, they believe that the wafer turns into the flesh of Jesus and the wine turns into his blood. And every person passes by the priest, they take some wafer and they take some wine, and they believe literally transubstantiation is the transformation of this substance into the flesh of etc. And they consume this. There are scholars who believe this has its origins in the cult of Mithras in Rome, pagan practice, very very possible. But they this and Jews were accused of obtaining the wafer. It's a little cracker. Um, I was looking on Google. There are actually ones that claim to be kosher. Why you would I don't know. Anyway,
Kosher Pesach, probably.
not kosher Pesach, no. And
But there's some people who insist they have to be made by hand and not by machine. I
somewhat,
heard some people are makbid on
yeah,
hand wafers.
that could be. It's a huge
Yeah.
muffler. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and anyway, and Jews were accused of obtaining the wafer and torturing it.
How would you torture the wafer?
They would throw it into boiling oil, or
Oh, I
they
see.
would throw it into a fire, or they'd stab it.
Interesting.
There are wood cuttings in which Christians depicted Jews stabbing a wafer. They'd have it on the bimah in a synagogue, and they'd stab it. And Christians witnesses would come forth and say they heard the baby Jesus crying. It was always baby because adult Jesus wouldn't fit in the pot on the
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That
right.
makes
They'd hear
sense. Yeah.
him crying, right, or they would claim that they saw blood coming out of the wafer. Now, it sounds insane, but entire Jewish communities were executed, were destroyed. There were pogroms based on this accusation of torturing a cookie. Unbelievable, right? And by the way, the level of evil that was attributed to the Jews is that the Jews understood that it in fact was Jesus, and that's why they tortured it. So they knew the truth, and specifically, right? Because you and I do not believe that this wafer is the body of Jesus, right? It's a wafer, it's
Correct.
nothing,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Why would I even spend my time even? It's ludicrous. But
Right.
the level of conspiracy
Right.
evil of the Jews was looked at that in that
Right.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
And so one of the features you find in all of these libels and all of this anti-Semitism is the sheer irrationality of it. Deicide, blood libels, torturing the host, poisoning wells, Jewish sicknesses, male menstruation, the influence of the Jews. Yeah, this unbelievable irrationality of it, right? Is number one. I mean, people accuse Israel of genocide in Gaza, right? I
Right.
mean, Israel, if they wanted to eliminate all the Palestinians, Israel has the firepower to do that.
Yeah.
We have enough artillery shells to cover every square foot of Gaza, much
Yeah.
cheaper than missiles. I mean,
Yeah.
right, right. What's going on? What the Gaza population has grown. People ignore this. They
Right.
absolutely ignore this. Right?
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
were there times in history because of these blood libels where the way we did things was changed out of concern that it would spark a pogrom? Like, for instance, was there ever a time when you were encouraged not to use red wine at the Pesach Seder or things like that?
Yeah. Code of Jewish law. In the Code of Jewish Law, Orach Chaim 472:11, the Ramah Ramosha Isserles of Krakow, 16th century Krakow, writes, even though the Code of Jewish Law says it is customary to use red wine for the Seder, so the commentaries there, Magen Avram and others, say that in places where it's common to have blood libels, we refrain from using red wine and only use white wine. This is mentioned in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. This is mentioned in the Taz and Shulchan Aruch Harav of the Alter Rebbe, that people would actually not use red wine at the Seder because of fear of the blood libels.
There never was somebody who said we shouldn't eat matzah.
No. Although I will say that although generally in matzah preparation, we require that it be religious, Jews who prepare the matzah, there were communities that specifically allowed non-Jews to participate in the process of making matzah.
So they could witness that no blood was
Yes, Rav
used.
Ovadia Yosef says in a responsum, he theorizes that the reason they did that was to allay accusations that the non-Jews would be involved. They'd be able to see that it's not basically, it is flour and water, and that's it. So that's why that was allowed. So yeah, Jewish practices did change for that reason, and we know there's been extensive censorship, often self-censorship of Jewish texts, in which we ask God to take vengeance against those who've tried to kill us, etc. So some of those texts have been I guess uh, made a little less
Softened
softened. Yes, softened would be the word, or sometimes
because it
named.
may sound
Yeah,
like a rallying call for a blood libel. I
exactly.
mean, not for a blood libel, for actual a
Yeah,
rallying call for Jews to kill Christian babies.
correct. And it's interesting. There were there was one of the most I think horrific pogroms ever that was based on a blood libel was in 1945 in Kielce, Poland. The Jews were accused of killing a Christian child in the cellar of a Jewish home in Kielce, Poland. This is 3 years after the First World War ended. Sorry, just right after the Second World War ended. These were Jews who were Holocaust survivors who'd come back to Kielce. 42 were murdered in this pogrom
Which
based on a
was
blood libel.
because of a blood libel.
And here in Poland, there were rumors circulating that Jews needed Christian blood because of what they'd gone through in the concentration camps. They were weakened and they needed Christian blood to
Like
strengthen
Dracula,
themselves.
kind of
It's
like a vampire.
it's unbelievable. I've been to Kielce.
Yeah.
The house where they're supposed to have happened does not have a cellar. It's just a one-story dwelling. I remember getting off the bus. There was a group of Polish people standing there, and I had a map with me, and I wanted to ask them directions somewhere. I walked over to them. As I'm walking towards them, they all turned their backs to me. They just turned back. They were not interested in talking to a Jew. Um, you know,
What is the most, is there a recent or something within very recent history where there was a claim such as this?
oh, sure.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, it's on Egyptian and Syrian television. This was not unusual. They've had series in which they've accused Jews of that. In Arab countries, just for example, Dr. Umayma Ahmad al-Jalama of King Faisal University in Saudi Arabia.
It sounds so nice when you say that. There's something about it. It just rolls off your tongue when you say that
This is
name.
in the May 2009 edition of Al Islam. He raises the desecration of host issues, that desecration of host libel, and he writes about the Jewish holiday of Purim. He says during this holiday, Jews must prepare very special pastries, the filling of which is human blood. This is a
So that's
professor.
what I was wondering if Muslims had somehow found a not Muslims in general, but some Muslims, if they found a way to move this from Christianity to to
Well,
Islam, so that would because that could work because that's took place in Iran.
yeah, I
So
mean,
there they get like a crossover effect where it's not just about Christians, but it's also this happened to
yeah. Although it's interesting, the most famous blood libel in the Muslim world was in the
yeah.
1800s, the Damascus blood libel, in
Okay.
which 80 Jews were imprisoned. They were accused of killing a Christian priest.
So it stayed Christian even in these Muslim
Yeah,
countries.
very interesting. Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now, in modern times, we had the Bayless trial.
Yes. The
Mendel Bayless,
Fixer. The
yes,
Fixer by
Bernard
Bernard
Malamet's
Malamud.
book,
Yeah.
excellent book,
Yeah.
based on the Mendel Bayless, who's buried in Queens, New York, Mount Carmel Cemetery,
Okay.
and died in 1934. He was accused by the now. It's interesting in the jury, the
Hmm.
jury's the judge and jury in the Bayless trial acquitted Mendel Bayless. They said there was no evidence that he killed his child, but in the final statement of the judge, he said, but it is, he says, it is clear. I don't actually have it here. He said, it's clear that this Yevchenko, this child, was killed. Andrei Yushchinky. My pronunciation is not. He was clearly killed by people for ritual purposes, by a religious group, although Mendel Bayless was not involved.
I did not know that,
So,
that that
so
was part of it. I thought he was just completely acquitted and it was
he was, he
no,
was,
but I thought the whole thing was shown to be a farce. But you're saying no,
no, no,
that
that
they took it very seriously and they said this happened. We just don't have evidence that he did it.
correct. This is what the jury
Hmm.
said. Is the accused meant? It says this. Has it been proved? This is the judge asked them. This is 1911. Has it been
Yeah.
proved that on March 12th, 1911, in one of the buildings of the Zaitsev brick factory, Andrei Yushchinsky was gagged and wounds inflicted of him? When he lost 5 glasses of blood, other wounds were inflicted on him. These wounds, totaling 47, caused Yushchinky agonizing death and led to almost complete total loss of blood. Jury said, yes, it has been proved. Is the accused Mendel Bayless guilty of having entered into collusion with others who have not yet been discovered in the investigation in a premeditated plan prompted by religious fanaticism to murder the boy Andrei Yushinsky? Right, that's the question. Was he part of this plan? Did the accused, in order to carry out the intention, they said no, not guilty. In other words, it's clear in the judge's final questions and the statement, etc., that there was this ritual murder done for religious fanaticism, and the question was Mendel Bayless part of this, and the answer was no, he wasn't. So that was in Russia. And then you have 1935 again in Kielce, and then of course you have in America in 1928.
When you say, of course, in America,
Well, okay, not of course, but in the United States, 1928,
yeah,
the Messina blood libel. That's Messina, New York, upstate New York.
okay.
1928, a 4-year-old Barbara Griffiths went for a walk, didn't come back home. It was right before Yom Kippur. They looked around, state police searched for her. No one could find her. A rumor began to circulate that the girl had been kidnapped by the Jews of Messina and used for religious purposes. That
Was this
related
an immigrant
upcoming.
population? Was
Uh,
it, do you think, like a European
yeah, there were
immigrant
quite a few. Yes,
population?
that was. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, the rabbi, whose name was Beryl Brenglass, was called to the police station I think it was Erev Yom Kippur, or maybe it was even on Yom Kippur itself, um, and he walked through this mob around the police station and was interrogated. He basically said to them and to the mayor, "You should be ashamed of yourselves for asking such questions." He was outraged that people. He gave a sermon about it. Um, this Barbara Griffiths was found the next morning about a mile from her home in the woods. She got lost, she fell asleep, and she turned up. Now, interestingly, the people in this town, a lot of the people in the town said, obviously, the Jews heard that we suspected them, and they returned her before.
Of course.
You know,
That's obvious.
right?
That is obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm being
Um,
sarcastic because there has been some concern that when we talk about subjects like this, that somebody might think we're being serious when we make sarcastic remarks. So I just want to say
that was sarcastic.
that was sarcastic.
Atlanta, Georgia, 1913.
No
One of the
way.
most infamous cases
No way.
in modern times. Leo Frank,
Oh,
a
yes. I
Jewish
think.
manager at a pencil factory. He was from New York, very well educated. He was in Atlanta. He was accused of raping and killing 12-year-old Mary Fagan.
Oh, I didn't
Some folk
realize it was
songs.
a blood libel kind of thing.
Well, not
Yeah.
exactly a blood libel.
Okay.
He was not accused of using her blood for anything, any
Okay.
kind of ritual.
Right.
He was portrayed as a Jewish pervert and a sadist. The actual trial and the jury's consideration took less than an hour or two. It was like zero evidence. It was like, and there was an accusation, but there was a supposed witness who later on recanted, and so on and so. It was really her granddaughter, whose name is actually Mary Fagan. Still, I saw an interview with her. She's not convinced that he didn't do it. Um, uh,
Seriously.
yeah, there are people. If you do a search, there are a lot of anti-Semites, including there's a very famous not Candace Owens, who believes this was done by a Jew, by Leo Frank. He was pardoned by the governor. He was attacked in prison, by the way, and survived the attack. Someone slashed his throat. He was survived the attack. He was then pardoned by the governor, and then he was lynched in 1915. Um,
Why did the governor pardon him?
Lack of evidence, and
But pardoning is more than lack of evidence, right?
maybe
Yeah.
he was lynched by a group. They took photos of it. One of the people in the photos is Newton Morris, who was a Supreme Court judge, Superior Court judge in Georgia. There were some police officers involved. It was done. Taking him out of the prison was clearly done with the cooperation of the prison authorities, etc. And he was hanged, lynched. Right. So we have had these accusations well into the 20th century, and all over the world. Um,
Is there a record of Christian authorities of standing who spoke out against blood libels?
Absolutely. There are statements by numerous popes, at least three or four popes, came out opposed to the very idea of a blood libel. They said it is not true. The Jews do not do this. These accusations are not true. And yeah, there were.
How does that go back a long ways, or is that in
Yeah,
modern times?
that actually goes back to the 15th. Hold on, if I have the exact dates, I think somewhere, but that goes back to the 15th century, 14th century, 13th century. There were popes and church authorities who maintained that the blood libel was that a libel. It was not true. In the very there were some cases where papal authorities said that it was not true, and yet the local bishops and local mobs ignored that. That was pretty standard, actually, that the locals ignored what the popes said and went forward with their accusations and their show trials. Anyway, one of the famous cases was Simon of Trent, where the church actually sent a they sent someone to Trent because Jews sent a delegation to the Pope to try and try to defend the Jews.
Where is Trent?
Trent is in northern Italy.
Okay.
So Simon of Trent was basically a child who was found drowned by a Jew. You can imagine a Jew found a drowned child
Oh
in a
yeah.
drainage ditch near his
Oh
house.
my gosh. Imagine
Imagine,
what's going through his head.
oh yeah, and he
Yeah.
reported it to the authorities, which of course the Jews of the town were immediately arrested. They were tortured. We have record of their torture, um, horrific tortures. There was the local bishop condemned the Jews, and there was a the Pope actually sent someone from Rome to supervise. He was shut out by the locals. In the end, Jews were accused of this. Um, they were the Jews, of course, many Jews confessed because they were
Been
being
tortured.
tortured. Yeah.
Right.
So that was, but in that particular case, the Pope was not enthusiastic about the blood libel, but um, and so, but you do have papal bull, which have decried the blood libels and said that Jews are not accused of it. Um,
Did they, are there any other cultures that we know of or religions that were accused by Christians of doing the same thing, or it's just Jews, as far
well,
as you know?
Christians were accused of this by the Romans. Early Christians were accused of this by the early Romans at that time.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, why would they, what was the thinking about why Christians were killing babies
Don't
in
know,
that
honestly.
time?
I don't know, but I know that the early Romans did not like the Christians because, amongst other things, they believed that Christianity was out to take over the Roman Empire, which it was.
Which it did.
Yeah,
It
which it did.
eventually did do.
Yeah, so,
But they were accused, early Christians
yeah, apparently,
were accused of killing Roman babies
yeah,
for their blood.
yeah. Now, interestingly, sometimes the accusations were motivated by economic reasons. For example, William of Norwich, the the uh, the the church or the cathedral in Norwich was stuck for money. They were not doing well economically.
Uh-huh.
One of the ways that you could increase your income is if you would have a holy relic in the church. And a martyr who died or was murdered by Jews for because he was Christian, his body would be considered a holy relic. Pilgrims would come for blessings.
It
They'd give
increased.
donations, they'd pay an
Uh-huh.
entrance fee, they'd be charged. So, in addition, in the case of William of Norwich, one of the Jews who was actually accused of this murder was a person who was owed money by
Ah.
one of the accusers.
Uh-huh.
So, you've got a whole bunch of there's a range of economic motivations here. You've got the church who's looking for a holy relic, and this martyr is perfect. They'll make some money from this. You've got Christians who owe Jews money, right? One in
Right.
particular who so there's lots of intrigues and lots of other factors which are not purely religious
So
involved.
anti-Semitism sells. In other words, an accusation, an anti-Semitic accusation could be financially lucrative.
Well, look, we know for sure that, for example, in many places, Bois was one of these places, and England, this happened a lot. Jews were heavily involved in finance, money lending. Now, if the Jews are murdered or expelled, what happens to your debt? That's it. No more debt. So,
There was a theory that I once heard. I don't know how well researched it is, but there was a theory that Shakespeare chose to to write Shylock into The Merchant of Venice because anti-Semitism sells, that there had been a play. Who's the guy who I forgot what his name is, who some claim wrote some of Shakespeare. I mean, I think it's been
Oh,
debunked.
Marlowe, was it
Yeah, Marlowe. And I
Christopher
think
Marlowe?
he had, right. And I believe he had a play that had some anti-Semitic tropes in it, and it was very popular. There's some kind of theory that this is what gave Shakespeare the idea of having a character like Shylock in it because it sells.
Maybe. Look,
Certainly,
New York Times is aware of that.
right. Certainly, Tucker Carlson, Candace
Oh yeah,
Owens, Megyn
yeah,
Kelly, and many others
absolutely.
have
They're
been.
playing to the audience. This
It
sells.
sells. It makes money. You can make
Qatar
money.
also pays
Yeah,
for that. Yeah.
yeah,
Now, what we didn't get into, maybe we should do this as a part two,
yeah.
is the strange phenomenon of disparate groups that don't just disagree with each other, but probably hate each other, all making the same attacks and accusations against the Jewish people, the state of Israel, etc. You've got, there are Christians, not all Christians, obviously.
Yeah,
There are Christians who are into uh, BDS, uh,
right,
anti-Zionism and
right,
anti-Judaism and so on. You've got
right.
Muslims.
Yeah,
In addition, you've got the extreme right and the
yeah,
extreme left politically.
yeah, yeah.
People who are woke, LGBTQ activists,
Right.
and so on and so forth.
Black Lives Matter.
It's bizarre that they
Yeah.
all. It type of reminds me of Woody Allen, who said his parents sent him to interfaith camp every summer. He says there he was beaten equally by people of all races and creeds. You know, so
I mean, you have to admit it's low-hanging fruit.
it is. Maybe
It,
that's an
I
easy
mean,
explanation.
yeah,
Could be. Yeah,
yeah.
that may be. Jews have been targets for a long time, so why not? That may be. I think there's maybe a deeper explanation, spiritual and psychological. But you know what? This could be a cliffhanger so that our
I'm sure there's nothing people would rather listen to for a next episode than more about blood libels.
well, we're going to move away from blood libels to more contemporary anti-Semitism, and maybe what do you think? I don't know. It's
I think so. I mean, we have things like being accused of killing young Palestinians for their organs.
they,
Yes.
I'll tell you, it's interesting. There was someone at Rutgers, a professor at Rutgers, published an article about this. Um, in a peer-reviewed. I mean, yeah, he claims
Yeah.
that the Jew. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there are these accusations, and in contemporary, we haven't really touched that much on contemporary
Right.
anti-Semitism. Much of it has been a brief view of history
Right.
survey, but I think it's worthwhile discussing, and people who think about our tens of listeners and watchers,
Maybe not tens, but at least 10.
at least 10,
Right.
maybe there's a minion,
Right.
right?
Right.
So please
If you before you get to that, even just to continue this last point, if you find somebody just giving a soundbite for their hatred of Israel nowadays, including celebrity actors, etc., the line is they are killing Palestinian children.
that's it. That's right.
That's the line. That's
There are
the
probably
line.
more, according to the figures of these anti Semites, there are more Palestinian children than there are anything else in the Middle East. It's like the
Yes,
largest
you
population.
couldn't. Yes, yes, because
They claim Jews that
right, the numbers
killed
that
more
we have
Palestinian
killed.
children than there
Right,
actually exist. It's like,
right. But that's the soundbite. I mean, even recently there have been a couple kind of featured people, Javier Bardem and certain other kind of celebrity actors who they have a soundbite ready whenever talking about their activism. Their they are activists on behalf of Palestine,
Mm.
and when they characterize Israel, it is Israel genocidal massacre of Palestinian children.
Yeah, baby.
Sarah Lawrence University, apparently the student government has banned even J Street. They will not allow even uh, a student club from representing J Street to be on campus because of the white supremacy that is uh, represented by Israel. And again, always mentioning the killing of Palestinian children, which just has this, again, drawing on blood libel. This is
Absolutely.
the language of blood libel.
Yeah. I'm looking at a picture here from the Guardian in England of
Yeah,
protests, and it's not uncommon. Protests, they hold aloft dolls wrapped in white and soaked in blood, little babies. Right? I mean,
that's that's blood libel imagery.
it's classic. I'm looking at a picture here right outside Downing Street. They dead babies. They're waving dead babies in the faces of Jews. Right?
Yeah,
It's literally medieval,
yeah.
medieval blood libel, straight out of
And
it's
evil and medieval.
yes, absolutely. So yeah, how do we combat this? Um, Great question. What's the reasoning behind it?
Do
Another
we
question.
combat it?
Do we
Will
combat?
even be discussed.
Yes.
Should we?
So that's in
Should
our
we even
next,
try?
also true. Our next
Yes,
episode. So
yes,
please share. Very easy to share. There's usually a share button at the bottom on
yeah,
YouTube and on Torah
yeah,
Every Time, etc.
yeah,
Like, comment,
yeah.
and watch. So thank you very much, all of you who are watching. The two of you over there and you there, right now.
If this is the only one that you've listened to, not every one of our podcasts is this depressing.
We're not always so dark. Yes, we sometimes
Yeah.
discuss joyous things.
Yes.
Most of the time we do.
And when Mordecai does, he smiles.
Yes, I smile sometimes at blood libels, but I will maybe end with a statement by Ahad Ha'am, the great Jewish poet, who once wrote an essay called Chatzi Nechama, a half a half comfort, a partial comfort. He writes this: this accusation is the solitary case in which the general acceptance of an idea about ourselves does not make us doubt whether all the world can be wrong and we right, because we all know it's based on an absolute lie. Every Jew who has been brought up among Jews knows as an indisputable fact that throughout the length and breadth of Jewish history, and there is not a single individual who drinks human blood for religious purposes. You might ask, is it possible that everybody can be wrong and Jews right? Yes, it's possible. The blood accusation proves it.
Beautiful.
So that's a half comfort.
Yeah.
Right? So here we're ending. Look at this, folks. We're ending with something positive, and I'm smiling. Huh? Okay, right. Okay, this is.
Yeah. There you go.
Accuse me of being some dour historian who's only, right. But no, this is it's a half comfort. You ask, can the whole world be wrong and we right? Yeah, here it is. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of cases of the whole world's wrong and we're right. Guess what? Still true today. Thank you for watching, and good to see you all again. Actually, I don't see any of you except it's good to see you, but
Thank you. You don't sound enthusiastic when you say that.
all right.
All right.
Again,
Okay.
share, like,
Yes.
etc.
All right. Be well.